Yeah, it was the hottest of all four.
It might not be hot at all.
It's always Thursday when you live in Jawn. Tonight we celebrate the 33rd anniversary of our very first show back when you still had to watch us in black and white and the newspapers didn't even relay our messages for at least a week. Now due to satellites and an extensive cable network under our studio, we can be seen and heard by over 1 million people without much stress on the local electric system. I'll be wearing a hat tonight and Steve Moore will be proclaiming that birds are wonderful. Nathan will be steering our conversation to match up with the song he picked Tuesday to perform live on air. It's all fun. It really is. We wish you could all sing along and feel the happiness in the air. It take us for suckers. We know right from wrong. Enjoy and be kind to each other. Jawn wants to be known as one of the best cities in the valley.
Little frog sitting on a log, one of them fell in. One frog said to the other frog, well, you better go get him. Two little frogs sitting on a log, one of them fell in. Last little frog, he sat and thought, good thing they can swim. Jabberjaw, 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 Jabberjaw. Three little frogs sitting on a log, one burst into a grin. One frog said to the other frog, wonder what's got into him. Two little frogs sitting on a log, one laughed until he is red. Last little frog, he sat and thought, must have been something I said. Jabberjaw, 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 Jabberjaw.
It's really going to put a damper on our conversation.
Oh, we're hitting it? Oh, this is it. We are on, folks, live from Nathan's Land. It's Jawn, episode 33. Nathan Moore here, your host. This is Kyle Hogg. This is Steve Moore, and we are at your service. Wherever you're watching, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, talk to us and let us know what's on your mind. And that's all I got. We're in. We're now in.
We are in. We're on. What number is this one?
33.
33.
This is the age Jesus was when he was crucified.
Wow.
Wow.
If that
No, that's the speed that I ran my records on.
what? Oh, 33 and a third.
33 and a third. That's
Rotations per minute.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is that the reason they do that speed in honor of Jesus?
Absolutely.
The Christians, they controlled the record business back in the early days.
It's always fun to try to listen to records on the wrong speed too. It is. I mean, it never gets old. Definitely when I was a kid, I don't know if anything delighted me more than changing the speed on a record and listening to how silly they sounded. I'm easy to please. I'm very easily entertained.
Well, it shows curiosity. That's good. But I never would have occurred to me to do a whole lot of that.
Right.
Maybe once to see what it sounded like. We all have our little quirks that we pick up along the way. Have you got? No, you're normal.
You're normal.
I used to love back in the hardcore days when you'd buy like a 45. and you couldn't tell if they wanted you to play it at 45 or 33 speed because it was just so fast. You're like, this sounds a little bit too fast, and you'd slow it down. This sounds a little bit too slow. Like you weren't really sure what speed you're even supposed to play the 45 at.
A lot of Beatles songs.
Right, right. Oh, wait. You get halfway through and you're like, this isn't right.
Something wrong here.
What's the other speed? 78?
Yeah, 78.
Wait a minute, that was not a woman singing. No.
Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Exactly.
78.
That's probably how they were born.
We have a actual off camera. You can't tell this, but we have a guest producer at the moment, Lex Park over there.
Lex Park in the house.
Controls, yeah.
We couldn't do it without you, Lex.
Kethra is her book club just went and saw the movie Barbie.
Wow.
And there was a part of me that thought earlier in the week, I was like, maybe we should have joined them and gone and seen the 4 o'clock showing of Barbie. And that's what we'd be talking about now if we had. But we'd all be probably exhausted and asleep in our chairs at this point.
Well, we'd all be late
Right.
for the first part of that, you know.
Yeah,
I'd like to see it. I think we're all fascinated by how something that topically not cool is that cool.
Right. Right.
In a day when cool doesn't even exist anymore.
Right.
I don't ever talk about that.
I know you don't. That's the first I've heard of it.
Well, and I
It
really,
explains a lot, though.
That's as far as I'll go with that. Except it was a weird time in my life.
Mm-hmm.
They used to call you the Pink Panther, didn't they, when you were over there? So funny, good movies. What are your opinions of the Pink Panther movies? Funny or stupid or?
I didn't watch them.
You never seen the Pink Panther
I
movies?
saw like the first one, but I didn't see it. I like funny movies and I like detective movies, but I didn't like the combination. Or maybe I'm just anti-French because of some of the experiences. Well, that's another story.
Trauma, right?
Trauma is a better word.
Right.
The Pink Panther movie said one of my favorite lines ever was, "Does your dog bite?" He reaches his hand out and the dog bites.
I love the Pink Panther movies. It was always so interesting how, like, the beginning of them, when you're a kid and you're watching it for the first time and you see
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I completely
which came
identify
first?
which came first.
I'd like to know that myself.
It had the great theme song.
Wasn't that a Henry Mancini? Did he do that?
What did the Pink Panther say when he stepped on an ant? Dead ant. 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 Sorry.
Well, that was just
Oh,
horrible.
we forgot to walk Lex through the sound effects. We do have rim shots and laugh tracks over there, but it might be too late to teach you all that. It's all on the keyboard. Hit the low C.
Inspector Clouseau.
And then hit the low C sharp. There you go. That might come in handy.
Gosh, that was the weakest laughter I've ever heard.
It was just in his headphones, though.
It's like somebody leaving.
Anna Bloom.
I remember one time some friends from DC visited.
Oh, hold on. We just got a production tip. This might be a little too much to walk you through. I haven't added the microphone to the other camera angles.
That's all right. I won't use them.
Just won't use them. Maybe here in a second I'll walk over and we can fix that.
Well, we have more than one angle for the cameras.
It's a new feature, but apparently we're on the main camera now. Yeah. I just did that in the last 30 minutes trying to kick it up another level to where he has buttons that say Steve, Kyle, and Nathan, and the camera zooms in on us, and it's production quality, like trying to up the production quality. But apparently I forgot to add the sound to each of those new scenes, so whenever it zoomed in on us, it just got quiet.
Just be careful switching.
Yeah?
I think I see how to do it. I'm going to give it a shot. I'll just leave it on the main camera and we'll test
Okay, have at it.
Play around over there.
Yeah. Well, if you have any questions, just holler.
Friday at when Jane's band Wax Bats played in Bremen.
How was that?
It was very good, but I freaked out because before the show, Brian has a pretty good setup with lights and everything, and he said, "You're in charge of the lights."
Oh, you got to do the lights?
And
You got to do the lights.
it was like this little toy remote control, and I think he meant like every 10 minutes maybe change the lights from green to flashing. But of course, I was trying to change with the beat. So after about 10 minutes, this big puff of smoke comes out of it. I'm like, oh no, I blew the light.
What?
So I just set it down, didn't know what to do,
And ran.
and Daryl was sitting there, and I was like, Daryl, I think that set the thing on fire. There's smoke coming out of it. He goes, just set it down for a second. So he picked it up, and then I just blown the flashing lights. I didn't blow the solid lights. But man, I was so scared. I'm going to have to go up there and dive on top of the thing before fire breaks out throughout the whole bar.
Oh, man.
Your 6-year-old daughter would come running out of there and start screaming.
I was telling you, Brian's bass player just, as probably happens to every musician, was just walking away and tripped over a cord and fell on the ground. Didn't hurt himself, but took a pretty loud.
During the show?
Then when they were over.
Ah.
They were getting off. It wasn't really a stage, but he just stepped and he fell. Hit the ground like we would all do and tried to get up nobody noticed. But his daughter was like, ah! I just heard, she's like, shh, shh. And she was, my daddy fell. But so she was so loud that everybody in the whole place that didn't even notice he fell started coming in there. And he was like, please just stop, be quiet, please everybody leave. He just wanted to stand up and brush it off, If he said, somebody take her. And she was screaming. You could tell he was like, oh my God, if I just fallen, I could have popped right back up, But he had to lay there and try to calm her down.
Wow.
with the lights smoking behind him and everything.
Quite a show.
God, that reminds me of, I just had a flashback of I was a kid, me and my best friend, Jimmy Goodlow, had gone to see a magician at the Stanton Public Library. And I think some of our parents were with us and stuff. And the magician asked for a volunteer from the audience, and Jimmy's dad ended up getting picked. So Jim Goodlow goes up there, and the magician does this whole routine where he starts pulling these scarves out of his pants. Right. And it's like this endless string of scarves. And at one point he goes like this, and he gives it a yank, and there's a pair of boxer briefs tied between the scarves. And we're all rolling, and I look over, and Jimmy just starts bawling. just starts, ah, like this. It was the whole thing. I'll never forget that image. I was like, oh no. It's just
but it all turned out okay.
It all worked out in the end. I just thought that was a really interesting impression of what was going on.
Right.
It just felt like his dad was.
It's wonderful.
Going home with no underwear, I can't believe it.
Right. What's the traumatic part of this? What do you think?
Well, yeah, you had to think that through.
It wasn't women's underwear, was it? That's why it was right.
Well, that's pretty exciting. You got to do the lights.
Yeah, it was.
Do you see like a potential future for yourself in lighting designer, maybe?
It was very impressive sitting there at the table and like Jane came out when I pointed. It was just like a little. It was like something you would have like in this back in the '80s. It was just like it had like a long antenna on it, just like a couple of buttons, and everybody would sit down. And I'd point it, and they were like, nobody knew what I was trying to control. Their waves, so turn this on. Yeah.
Sounds like something you could easily abuse. All right, everybody over here.
You see that smoke?
We better do what he says. Yeah, I'll check on the audio real quick.
You see that fire I started over there? I can set you on
I
fire
see where
too.
if you choose a thing, you can add a source, but I didn't know what to choose from there.
Well, you guys.
We're just holding our
That was
breath
my
till you get
guess,
back.
but it didn't say mic like the. Oh.
Right. You know what we could do?
But so anybody that missed the show last Friday, they're playing September, like the first Friday in September.
I'm going to try to make it again, Jane. I will try.
Clock Tower.
I'm going to give it an honest effort. I just couldn't quite pull it off the other night, but I was thinking of you.
I was so close.
And you missed some really bad poetry.
See if that works.
Yeah, where'd that come from? Tell me, poetry?
Yeah, oh God, now I can't think of his name. What are the people in the band? We talked about his bad poetry last week. Oh God, I'm drawing a blank. The guys in Jane's band. What are the people's names? Not
Jimmy Kimmel?
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Jimmy's poetry was just as terrible this time as it was the time before.
I don't remember us talking about Jimmy
Have y'all
Kimmel.
talked about that? Is he okay with us?
I don't think that's very nice.
It seems dangerous.
Yeah,
It's done on purpose. I think.
I know that's.
And one of them, he read it because somebody requested it, and the rest of the crowd was looking at him like, "Who requested this? That we had to hear it twice." You know, this is. But
he understands how he's going to be received.
I think so.
And,
I don't think he's that out of it when he's up there.
Well, Jimmy was always a very intelligent person, but I haven't seen him in several years.
Yeah, you never know.
People go downhill in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I hear. That's what people tell me a lot. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, once you start going downhill, it's easy to gain speed.
It gets easier and easier. Let me tell you that.
Yeah.
To go downhill.
Slippery slopes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, gets easier and easier.
Steeper and steeper becomes the slide.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like the start of a poem.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking of.
You haven't brought a poem in for a while.
Hey.
I have my journal here. I've done several things in my journal lately, but
That's a great journal.
it is. I love the size of it. It's like it's going to outlive me. I've been writing for years, and it's still.
Look at that. That's an inspiring
really-
book. I always loved that moment of. It's been a while, but I would always spend a long time in the store picking out what my next journal was going to be.
Yeah.
And you could just hold them in your hand, and like when you find the one, there's this. Oh, this is it.
Yeah.
This is the one.
And it's true too, because now I have all my journals up on the wall, and you pull them down, and that the outside of it has its own character.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember what year it was, but I remember the journal time.
Right.
I live on journal time, not a year. Don't do numbers very well. Oh, Phoebe Jo was born that day. That's my new granddaughter. We all got to see her.
I love that book review you just put on Facebook and about
The mystery guest.
the mystery guest. And not only did I love the review, but even more than that, I noticed that you had one of the baseball cards Dad gave you in there as your bookmark.
Was it? I didn't even
I think so, because I got the same thing sticking out of my book now. I was bonding with you over that baseball card sticking out of the top of the book you're reading.
That was just a random pick that like hit so perfect for that time period.
Sounded like it. Apparently it worked, Lex. Scooby in the chat says she can still hear us when you're zoomed in.
Is that so you can see your dad's new glasses? Is that what the zoom's for?
Those are nice glasses.
Thank you. I'm enjoying. I don't know where this one's going to go.
When it's in the works?
Yeah, I wasn't playing around with it. Yeah, just thinking about words. I think both of you are the same way. Fascinated with words, and sometimes you just get stuck on a word. And I never had as much respect as I needed for what my son Daniel was doing with Latin and Greek.
Right.
To go back and to understand the word.
Right.
But the word has a sound, and that's part of what you want to understand. Like some things, like whippoorwill, that's what it sounds like. So the word and the sound are tried to mimic each other. And other things are just totally unrelated. And so many of them go back to Latin and Greek in our language, of course. I'm just talking about our discussions. But, you just look at all of that and where does that word come from? Like this word yesterday was on the news. The word was perch.
Perch.
P-E-R-C-H. And I just sat there and thought about, think about it. What comes, when I say perch, what was the first thing each of you thought about?
I was wondering if it was a bird. Is it a bird? It is a bird, right?
No.
It's not? There's not a bird called a perch?
No.
It's just what they do?
Yes.
Yeah, I was just thinking like with your
Wow.
I was just thinking like your feet wrapped around a branch sitting.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I was also thinking of that action, which is probably what led me to picture a bird there. But how also the place where you do that action is also called a perch. So you can you can perch on a perch.
You can be a verb, perch.
I think I pictured a perch perching on a perch.
Exactly.
Except a perch.
Now,
My first
here's the
perch
last-
didn't really exist.
Here's the last part that should be there, is that a perch, a bird, no, you're perching on a perch. A bird, let's call it a kingfisher.
Okay.
A kingfisher was perching on a perch, eating a perch.
Eating a perch?
Yes.
The
Because a
fish.
lot of people, when
Oh,
I
it's a
said
fish.
it's a fish.
Oh, man. The one animal that can't perch on a perch.
But if you,
I
but
love that. Also, that's just beautiful.
but
It's probably the only animal that can't actually perch on a perch.
but if you go out in the woods and you buy a perch and take it home, is that a purchase?
Oh, that's a rim shot. Right.
A purchase. Like
Well, I mean,
like
well,
a duchess.
no, seriously, is something's perched on the counters, everything's perched on the shelves, and you take it home. Is that why it's called a purchase? Well, that's what they use. not what
There's
they
not,
eat.
those things aren't usually perched.
What are they just settled there? They settled on the shelves.
They're just, they're sitting there. You have to do that thing. Do that thing again.
What did the Pink Panthers say when it was sitting on a branch eating a fish?
Let me do that. I got a caption for that. Do that one more time. That is the perfect view of a
Jackass purchase.
of a mentally ill owl. It's the best way I can describe it. But I was going to say something might be insulting to owls, but a mentally disturbed owl.
Well, with humans, like you can, aren't you? Like if you sit on the edge of a chair, aren't you like perched?
Yeah,
That-
you
that
can be
works.
perched. Oh yeah, yeah, you can be perched. It involves you can't just perch on the ground.
Right.
I don't think that's
perched
possible.
on your perch, eating some perch that you purchased.
Here we go.
On purpose.
Perchance,
I bet
might you
I bet
share?
there's at least 2 more right there. We give a contribution to this paragraph.
What's so funny? He said perchance, and I said on purpose. So we got just. I didn't mean to, or yes, I did mean to.
Well, I'm
is
going
the
to have to bring the English department on you a little bit because you're doing a lot of PUs.
Yeah.
And you got to keep it to PERs because the PU's not right.
Right.
You get a PU.
I'm getting ready to do a lot of FUs, so we don't change this conversation.
Michelle, good to see you. Welcome to the show.
Oh, hi, Michelle.
So the perch, the fish, spelled the same as the
Same
other
way.
perches?
Yeah,
is-
they have to be, or we won't
Is
play
it
this
EA?
game. PER.
Just
They're both
PER.
they're both PERCH. Now, parch is a
Even
whole
the
nother
verb?
discussion. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you perch on a perch.
But perch does bring, if somebody says they were perched up on the cliff or they were perched in the tree, it does
Yeah.
bring a very specific picture to your mind.
Yeah, it's an image of them
Right.
dangling out over something. So yeah, that's definitely what the verb means.
Right.
It means you're on something precarious or holding on to something.
Right.
That's what it actually means. And then the question is, and we have to ask Daniel this, is how do you go from perch the fish?
Right.
What's the relationship there? I don't, and I didn't Google it or pursue it, so it's wide open out
I
there.
definitely remember as a young person before I understood it all, and not that I completely do now, but it just amazed me how all these different languages, you got Spanish, French, German, all completely different languages using the same letters. It's like
Yeah,
what
I hear that.
what
I hear
on
you.
earth is going on? Why do
Yeah.
they all use the same letters?
Yeah,
And
because-
Daniel knows way more about that than I do, I
Well,
imagine.
yeah, and they all go back to that same root. They came out from the same, they were on the same tree. Where the
Right.
Cherokees are over here, and they have their own tree going. So
Right.
it's like they're over here, and they make their own language. Chinese are over here, but if that tree is Latin and Greek, that's where we get our
But
Romance
the
language.
thousands of years it had to take to morph into be a completely different
Every-
language, but
everybody-
using the
ev-
same letters.
Everywhere you go, it's a little bit different.
It's fascinating,
It
isn't
is
it?
fascinating. Yeah.
That French and Spanish use the same letters, but two completely different
Oh,
languages.
completely different. Yeah. It's crazy.
I still don't know if I completely understand that. But I understand the tree idea, but the amount of time.
I think it talks about how malleable we are as human beings, how quickly things can change. It's like, it's like this weather thing that's going on now, this climate change. Climate's been changing all the time. Sometimes it's noticeable, and you might go 1,000 years and it be exactly the same, but that's not normal. Normal is change. And some of these changes change things differently, so every change is different. So it's not the same change. So you don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
And that's the way the world works. That's
Right.
the way this planet works. And the only thing we as human beings can do while we're here is try to slow it down to where we can control it for the best of the humanity and the best of all the organisms on the planet to keep the planet healthy. Should be our role. Right?
Right. Right.
I don't know how I got off on that. I'm sorry.
No, it's on all in the back of all of our minds for sure, especially with all
But
that's
it
going on
shouldn't be
immediately.
about making money, and it shouldn't be about greed, and it shouldn't be a game. And we should be trying to help. If we put all the money that we're spending on bombs on helping people that have had their house ripped off by a tornado, we'd be a lot better family of people.
Oh, it's so true.
And if politicians were just to agree with that and work off that premise, things could change very quickly. That's the good part.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the turmoil that we're going through right now is something we should be learning from, all of us. You know, about how things work and how you get us divided. You know, how you break up a good team.
Right.
Yeah, some people are very good at that.
Right.
Not just lawyers.
Right. Right.
But
Just joking, lawyers.
talking about language, I mean, I was reading all this stuff about in Florida now, where they're trying to say, you know, being in slavery had some benefits and stuff. And not that I think about slavery all the time, but all the billions of things that are wrong about it and crazy about it. I thought, man, you got to come over to another country where they're yelling at you to do stuff and you don't even understand the language. I was thinking, man, what if somebody just took me somewhere and they're like, even if they weren't going to be mean to me unless I disobeyed them, they're like, ta 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 ta, and I'm like, I don't even know what you're telling. I'll gladly do it, but I don't understand what you're telling me to do. Like, what? I never even thought about that before. What a huge, you know, you come over here and you're like, all right, I'm scared. I'll do what you want me to do. Just be nice to me. And somebody's telling you to do something in a language you don't understand.
Yeah.
Like, what in the world do you do? You're like, well, just look around. Like, I point at something, you know, tell me, give me a clue. Oh, man.
Try to find people that think like you do.
Oh.
I just the idea of learning another language. I can't even imagine learning another language at this point. I was never good at it in school.
Oh, no.
I mean, what languages did you take?
I took first year Spanish twice.
Did y'all study other languages when you were in?
Sure.
That was always.
I had 2 years of Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
And the same teacher and the same C.
I think it's a talent. I don't think if you even, well, I guess if they took me to another country and nobody spoke English, I guess eventually I'd learn to speak the language. But like one of my nephews just, you know, I'm going to learn, you know, French, and like, you know, a year later, he's talking French and reading books and stuff. I'm like, man, I just don't know if I could do it.
Well, I think every brain's different.
Right.
Some are just better at that,
Right.
for sure.
Right.
I mean, you have people that grow up with 5 and 6 different languages and
Right.
can speak them all fluently, and most brains just couldn't do
I'm
that.
so jealous of that.
I have trouble with
Right,
one,
right.
personally. But
Immersion would help. Like
Yeah.
going to France
Oh,
or something
definitely.
to learn
Yeah.
French.
Oh, sure.
And
And the younger you start, that makes a big difference, too.
right.
We
That's
get
what hung me up when I was trying to think. I was just like, there was a part of me that was just like, I couldn't do it now. Like just
Right.
just hung up on that idea. Like, oh my God, my brain just can't even imagine learning a new language at this
Right,
juncture.
Yeah, I hear you.
But it's funny too. Like a friend of mine, I think when he was 8 years old, I think it was his mother, and he had like 3 or 4 siblings, and him came from Cambodia, and they went to Seattle, and didn't speak any English, and like they set him up in this apartment. And he said the people that set him up, they had a TV in there, and they just watched wrestling all day. So he told me, I learned to speak English by watching professional wrestling. I was like, man, that's like so weird.
That is so funny on so many levels.
They're like, well, when are we getting together? Friday, Friday, Friday.
I will take you out. I am the greatest. Ah!
You hear so many stories about that people.
Thank you.
I can't.
Coming to the Richmond Coliseum this Friday.
You hear about that all the time. People learning a language through watching television, and I don't understand. I guess with subtitles.
He just said that was all it was on. You eventually just put things together.
I can't imagine. How would that work though? Can you imagine just watching a show in another language and picking it up eventually? Like watching. I've heard that. I learned to speak the language by watching television.
They probably have books that give you the word, but you don't, when you read the word, you don't know how to say it.
Right.
So it's more about how you say the language
Right.
as much as anything.
Right. Okay.
So you start talking like a wrestler. That's rough. But, we do all end up talking like what we heard when we were little.
Right.
On some level, it just changes, but we mimic that for at least a while.
Right.
There's a great line in the Don Williams song, "Good Old Boys Like Me." You know that song?
No, I don't think I do.
Oh, it's a beautiful song. One of the best country songs of all time. "Take You Away." But he's got a line in there about how he learned to speak like the guy on some radio station. And he was this country boy. It's about him growing up in the South. He said, "I learned to speak like this other guy." And that's how he got out. He said he wanted to leave the South, and that was one way he did it, was learn to talk different. And that's just the way it is.
Right.
Every now and again, I have a mild Southern twang that I picked up, but I feel like I learned a lot of how to speak from TV myself as a kid growing up.
I didn't see it. I never thought I had any Southern accent except till I was in college and went down to Florida with some friends over the Easter break, and we were around the campfire, and I realized that I was the only one there, and these guys from New Jersey were up there, and we all drinking beer and having fun, and they kept asking me questions, and the girls were giggling and everything. They was having a great time, and I got back to the campground, and they said, "You know what was going on, don't you?" And I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" I said, "He said they thought you were funny. They thought your accent was the funniest thing they'd ever heard." I just thought I was normal. I didn't know I had an accent till that moment.
You don't
It's a
know.
big lesson. So that first time you hear yourself on an audio tape,
Oh God.
well, how disgusting
Right.
is
Right.
that?
That is such a trip.
Nobody sounds like what they want to sound like.
Right.
Now, after all the recording you've done, what do you think your voice sounds like you, or does it always take you by surprise?
I think I've heard my voice recorded so much that it's changed the way I speak to the extent that now I speak in such a way that I sound like what I think I sound like when I hear the recording back.
But does that affect how your new recordings sound?
I think in some weird way.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I first heard my voice recorded, I was like, "Oh my God, I sound like that." So I changed the way I sounded. So then I wouldn't be shocked when I heard it back. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Well, it's funny that the story you just told, when my ex-wife's father passed away, and all of his relatives from New York and New Jersey, and I hadn't been to like very many funerals, and I went, and I was like, "Man, this could be horrible having to sit in here with everybody, just saddest thing in the world." So it's her mom and the brothers and sisters and like 6 or 7 relatives from New Jersey. And it's the same thing. They just started asking me questions, and they were all busting out laughing. And I was like, "Man, they're all having like nervous breakdowns over this wedding thing." And then the same thing later, my wife said, "I just kept asking you questions. Your accent was cracking them all up. They thought that was the funniest thing." I was like, "Well, at least at least I could provide some humor."
Yeah.
You're a source of joy.
Well, that's the way I felt.
But that's just not. We would never do that to somebody. If you got somebody from Jersey down here, we wouldn't just keep asking them questions because we were amused by their accent, would we?
Well, I think the Southern accent
there are
is
different
more
ways
ignorant.
you can react.
Southern accent's just funny. It's
Yeah,
just funny.
it's
Sorry.
Yeah, it is funny. Yeah, the Jersey accent's not funny. It's assaultive.
It's
It has an attitude.
right.
You know,
Right.
So their whole point is, don't mess with me.
Hey.
Well, it's funny. It's like we moved there, and I think we've been there like 8 months or a year or something. My wife goes, I just don't like the way I don't like the way men talk here. I'm like, why? She goes, the way they talk, it sounds like they all beat their wives because it's that aggressive, you know,
Is
like
that-
you know,
yeah.
like you back talk me, you know. Oh no. And I was like, I never even thought about that, but it is like sort of a, you know,
Well,
blunt.
yeah, that's Ralph Cramden. Yeah, one of these days. You know,
I would-
what I'm talking about?
Yeah, oh yeah, to the moon, Alice. Right?
Right. Very good. Very good. But
What was that, New York?
That's all. Of course, you know, it's all bluster.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what makes the show funny. It's not about an abusive husband. So it's about a guy that they have their own way of playing.
Mm-hmm.
I just saw a Popeye cartoon. I don't know why I said it that way. I just saw a Popeye cartoon.
Popeye.
I just saw a Popeye. I'm French all of a sudden. I saw a Popeye. I watched a Popeye cartoon a couple days ago, and it was the most aggressive. Olive oil was getting tossed around from Popeye.
I can't hear
and
you.
Bluto.
I can speak quiet. Shut up. You broke the place up. You have to go back 3 sentences. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I couldn't breathe.
I was watching a Popeye cartoon.
The last time I went to the doctor, he said, you can only laugh so hard, it's going to kill you.
Oh no!
Yeah,
Oh my
Gosh,
goodness!
we better tighten
gotta
up
tone it
there.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even tip him.
Well, this.
But I just did. I think.
Well, Dad, we're talking about this new cartoon.
All right. What? All right.
Called
I'm all right.
Popeye.
I'm all right.
Perhaps you've heard of Popeye.
That's what it was. All right.
that's
Pick it
the
up
way-
from.
'cause that's
Pick
the way
it
they-
up from.
'cause
I'm
that's the
not
way
going
they-
to try to say.
That's the way they used to say it on the wrestling shows.
No,
so that's how I
don't
learned it.
do that cross your leg things again.
Now, I was watching a Popeye. Now I'm afraid to even say it. I was watching a Popeye cartoon, and poor Olive, it was like the most aggressive, like Popeye would grab her and tie her in a knot, then Bluto would come and punch Popeye and take olive oil. I was like, man, that's when kids grew up. Like women were just like tossed around and torn, pull their arms so they break apart and everything.
I mean, it is so amazing when you watch a lot of old stuff, just how it did not stand the test of time. You're just like, man, this
I
is
wonder if
just.
they're playing Popeye cartoons right before Barbie.
Oh God.
Oh, look, it's Popeye.
Now that's the kind of idea that could fly. Lex, you can have that one. Commercial coming up. Yes, Popeye cartoons run right into Barbie.
But I remember watching those. It was just like funny. You never thought about it. But then, like nowadays, I was watching like, man, this is really the bad image to
It's just not okay.
Yeah.
Pepe Le Pew, like a little stalker
Oh,
Le Pew,
yeah.
doesn't take no for an answer. Just
Some bad guys out there.
and it was just normal. Yeah, growing up, you're just like, this is funny.
tore her arms off. I can't believe it.
Yeah. But back to accents, I feel like, you know, with television is when it sort of started with the homogenization of culture to where everything sort of becomes the same, and dialects and accents become diluted, definitely diluted. But I imagine there's a lot of people like sort of holding on now to accents and dialects as sort of a point of pride, or almost intentionally maintaining like the Boston accent.
Right.
Like you would think kids these days, they got their TikToks and everybody's hearing everybody on television and stuff. It's like you almost have to choose
Right.
to talk like your parents or something.
I think if you look at it in terms of evolution, it's definitely going to change over time. No matter all these things you're saying are true and happening, and there'll be pockets of it, but the big main road that's going to drive into the consciousness is the idea that we're all going to sound more alike.
Right, eventually.
But that's not a bad thing necessarily, because you're saying we're going to choose what we want to sound like.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, I love Southern people now. Don't get me wrong, but I'll tell you this: sometimes it just takes us too long to say something. That's just the way it is.
Right.
Whereas that guy from New Jersey we were talking about, he says everything he wants to say and everything he thinks I might want to hear for the rest of my life in about the same amount of time.
In one syllable.
Yeah, yeah, with no comments. That's the part I don't get. There's never. They don't even do comments. They just, but you get it.
It's interesting how people can affect their voices to be a part of a group. Like I always remember thinking, like there was a way stoners talked in the '80s that actually didn't. It wasn't because they were like it was. Everybody thought it was because they were doing drugs, and they were, and that was killing their brain and making them talk like that. But really, what was going on is they were identifying with each other. It was like a conformity to a group.
Right.
Like I don't, you know what I mean? Like it was sort of a fascinating phenomenon. The drugs weren't really making them talk like that. They were identifying with other druggies and talking like that. Like, dude, I mean, this is not just the pot making me sound like this. Like, I'm just saying. I mean, this is like I'm actually identifying with my gang right now, my crew.
Right.
We talk like this. I don't know. It's just fascinating.
That's very interesting. Very good deal.
Just like when
Good
hip hop and
observation.
rap came around, everybody was talking like that way.
Right,
You know, you're like,
right.
What was that?
Like when hip hop and rap music and stuff came around, you hear all these kids, you know, everybody was using slang you never heard before, and you
Yeah.
know,
With a cadence, with a whole
Yeah,
new thing. It's that young brain too. Not
Yeah.
only being able to learn new languages and stuff, but being able to, in your teenage years, like just completely change the way you talk to
Right.
identify with a new group. The I wish I could do the like the Yale rich. Like that dude that used to have a TV show. Who am I thinking
yeah,
of?
the white-haired guy.
The white-
William F. Buckley.
William F. Buckley.
Yeah.
Like what dialect is that? So what you're saying is it's like holy moly.
Talking down to everybody without even trying to seem like he meant to. Just
Yeah, that's
I mean, if you've met people that talk like that, and you just be like, "What in the world is going on?" I mean, you'd be asking them questions just to hear them talk, so you could laugh at them for sure.
yeah, it is crazy.
That's a great. That's good stuff. It's very true. Very true. But I see your voice being affected by all your traveling that you did out west, because you're again picking up everywhere you go and hearing everything, and so I think you were. Plus, I think since you do in a sense make a living with your voice, you were more attentive to that, and that's probably in other words, your singing probably led into the way you sound when you're not singing too. So I don't know.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I think you have a good, solid voice.
Have you ever tried to sing the word Popeye before?
Popeye. I'm strong to the finish because I ate me spinach. Does he sing that?
I think so. I think they almost all it's all singing. And what was the guy with the what was not the hamburger? What was the guy that ate the hamburgers?
I gladly pay you Tuesday.
Wimpy.
Wimpy.
In that Popeye?
Yep.
Yeah.
I gladly pay you
Wimpy.
Tuesday for a hamburger today.
Wimpy. Oh my God.
So just, somebody made
You
those.
know what I just thought when I was sitting here? I was just thinking about at the moment that I am dying, I would like for y'all to be here and be there, and anybody else wants to come over. But I want, right as I'm dying, as long as I want Kyle to say, Papa.
Looks like
And
he's
I
going to.
just- I
Looks like
wanna
he's going to see
if-
Papa.
And then I want to stop watching. I want to see if I live a little bit longer. How much longer I live. Because I'll start laughing when I'm dying. And I don't know. They've never done a lot of scientific testing of that. I think that would be an interesting scientific study.
Wow.
What's the
I think
control group version of that experiment?
Well, people are dying laughing all the time.
Oh, we got Squanjo in the house.
Oh, hey, Joe.
He says, and parents in my case are developing Australian accents from reading Bluey stories. Scooby says kids in the U.S. are developing a British accent from watching too much Peppa
Peppa the
Pig.
Pig, yeah.
What is Peppa? What is that? I didn't know what she meant.
It's like it's a family, a British family of pigs. My little nieces and my little nephews have like a little British accent sometimes from watching it.
That's crazy.
So here's another example. The it's sweeping the world, where people will draw out a one-syllable word into two syllables.
Right.
Like no.
Oh yeah.
Like have you picked up on that?
No, I'm not aware. What? Explain it again.
Well, I don't know where it originated, but people do it all the time now. Where I'm not very good at it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Like when you stretch out something, like you stretch out the first syllable, then you just add like a at the end of it for like no reason.
Right. Like
what? Give me an example.
oh man.
Was it you that knocked over the lamp? No, I didn't do it. It's almost like an exclamation.
Give me
like,
my phone. I'm not, these are bad examples though.
I'm not getting it.
Oh.
No, I don't do it.
Can you help, Lex? You got any?
I'm thinking I can't. I'm trying to think of any of them too.
I don't even know how to describe it.
I know what you mean though.
Yeah.
But yeah, you hear it once. It's like looking for a penny, and you'll start finding them everywhere. It's like
It's like a new little dialect.
it's a new dialect, right? That I'd love to. You could almost do a documentary of like where it happened first and how it spread. But like Jocelyn does it now because all the kids do it. It's like, and she spends so much time with kids, but it's like no is definitely
It's a Kardashian thing.
it might be like a Kardashian thing.
That might have been what happened.
One of the things in New Jersey that drove me crazy, and I've started to hear people down here say it now, like if the answer is yes, like did you see the show last night? No, yeah, I watched it. People just say no in front of, like they'd say no and then say yes. And in Jersey they did it all the time. I was like, why are you saying no? They're like, I didn't say no. I said yes. I said, yeah, but you said no before it. And I hear people down here saying it now.
Wow.
It's weird how these little viral things just sort of creep along.
Yeah.
Like here's another maybe a better example. Keep an ear out though for when you're watching TV or talking to people, and you'll. So my shoe they take a one syllable word and make it two. They add an at the end,
Okay,
and
all right.
you'll definitely see it. But here's another one I noticed that started years and years ago, but where people started rolling up their statements at the end to where it becomes a question. Like that became this weird viral. I think it was like a way that we get people to engage with us.
Right.
It was, but all you do is just roll up your statement at the end like a question. And like all of a sudden, like it and like they were doing it, then all of a sudden they're doing it, and like all across the country, all across the world, people started rolling up the inflection at the end of their sentence to make it a question.
That's why we get people to engage with us.
It's a way. It's a way. It's a way to get people engaged with you. It was almost like it was a way to like it was taught as like a way
Right.
to teach or to get people
Right.
involved in the conversation.
Indeed, it was by the culture.
But I felt always it always bothered me, and like when somebody first did it, I was like, that's weird, and then like somebody else did it, and then all of a sudden like everybody was doing it. I felt like Invasion of the Body Snatchers or something. Like, what has happened to everybody that all they're rising up at the end of their statements and making it sound like a question? Am I the only one of the three of us?
No, I've noticed that.
You've noticed that?
I have never thought much about it. If I noticed it, probably noticed it, but didn't put it all together like you have. Very
I mean,
interesting.
there are a lot of people, like I watch a lot of YouTubes and stuff, and I'm just like, oh my God, they're doing it on every, they're doing it on every sentence.
Well, it does put the ball in the other court.
It does. I mean, it is an effective way to communicate to a
I
certain
should do
extent.
a lot more of that.
You probably should. It's a good trick.
I'm just amazed at all the cursing that kids do now, like around their parents.
Oh, really?
And everything.
Oh, there's not the old rules.
Yeah, like I would never curse in front of my parents, and I just hear kids, saying whatever, parents just laughing, My parents would have been like, "What?"
Well, different rules of different parents, even today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think when I was growing, like in the 60s or 70s, that was like a sign of not really. If you were walking around cussing all the time, you weren't. It didn't show your best side. That you, even though you might cuss, you didn't really you weren't doing it out in public and stuff. Now you go anywhere and people, you just hear, I go to the park to walk around, you just hear cuss words from every single person walking around, Tougher
Yeah.
world.
What's that?
It's a tougher world.
Or just not as tough.
You see how I've put the inflection to make it a question?
If you do that every time, you never really have to say anything.
It's true.
That's
The ball's just perpetually in the other person's
All you're doing
court.
is just catching the ball and throwing it back.
Yeah. Yeah. So, did you find something in there, or should we do the bird? I see a completely different bird book than usual.
Well, we can do a bird.
You ready for a bird?
I'm ready for a bird.
I'm ready. Well, we need to do the bird. How much time we got? I feel like I've been here a long time.
Well, we got
8 o'clock.
We're at 8 o'clock.
So we got a half an hour. Is that what we do? Well,
It's 8 o'clock? See how I made that into a question?
You got to stop.
It's 8
there.
o'clock.
I have a low tolerance for that. I'm gonna tell
Stop
you.
asking me what time
I'm
it is.
telling you, that I have a low tolerance for that joke, and I want you to hear me.
You can start cussing pretty soon, aren't you?
Hey, you don't want to see what happens.
Now that we pointed it out,
That
you're
was-
going to hear it everywhere.
that
You're going to
was
feel
strike-
surrounded.
That's what I'm afraid of. I'm trying to cut this off before it gets down there and gets ugly.
I don't even see your bird book. Where is it? Oh.
Oh, what's this giant book?
Oh, that's the one I was telling you
this is
about.
the one you were telling
Yeah.
me about.
Oh yeah,
That looks pretty inspiring.
it's beautiful. I just opened up to a couple of pages, but we were talking about nests and we were talking about how intricate they were. I didn't say you were a weirdo for them.
Oh, here's a good question in the chat before we move on to the next topic. Well, J Dodge says, "What about the bored monotone voice? Ugh." Is that is that like is that a young thing? I could imagine a teenager. It makes me think of teenagers.
Yeah, being cool.
Then Scooby says, and this is a fascinating thing, any idea why many musicians sing without the accent that they speak with?
Good.
And that is very fascinating.
Yeah.
You'll hear somebody sing, and they sing without, and like Adele, she doesn't sing with a, almost none of the British singers sing with a British accent.
True.
But then the second they start talking, it's fascinating.
Yeah, that is interesting. I don't have an answer to that.
Hmm.
I bet.
In fact, I
I
can't-
bet there are people that's linguists that study that and could tell us. But
Can you think of a British well, actually, some punk, but like from the British invasion, any of them sang with a British accent?
Herman's Hermits.
Uh,
How do you do what you do to me? That doesn't sound British. That sounds Kyle. that's. I'm striking back. That's
Well-
that's a tit for your tat.
Is that because they were all listening to like American music back then?
I think so.
But I guess like blues singers didn't really sound like white, middle class Beatles sound.
It was they were the egg of
Right.
that came first.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah, the
But that is
Beatles
true.
were
Like
definitely.
who sings?
I mean, there's some like Irish folk music that sounds
Oh, definitely.
lilty, like their accent. I feel like there's like some punk bands and stuff
Yeah, like
that
I'm
sort
trying to
of
think, like
use
Sex
their British.
Pistols. You can sort of tell that's a British band.
Right.
Like Clash.
That was the first thing I thought of was It was the Clash and the Sex Pistols were the first two I thought of.
Now, do you think the Clash sound British? I'm trying to remember. Oh. Gosh, I
Definitely
don't
not
know.
American.
That is crazy.
It is it's an interesting.
Like, how about like
phenomenon.
Van Morrison? Like, what is he? I just think of him as having a brown-eyed girl. That's
What is also interesting in the same topic, like there's this, if you like go on YouTube and search for hip singing, there was this way, like after Amy Winehouse and a couple of really popular singers a couple of decades ago came out, all of a sudden everybody started singing like that. And like all the young kids, and after a while, you're just like, okay, I just can't even handle this anymore. But there's this whole way, this whole inflection of singing that was like this whole new thing. And when one person did it, it was like, wow, that's so unique and amazing. But then when you hear somebody else do it, but I feel like that it happens in the singing world too, where there's this way of singing for a little while that a lot of people experiment with, that you don't even hear outside of that genre or whatever. But it's interesting how that can sweep, how that can be like a viral thing, and you hear some kid on YouTube or something, they're doing this. I wish I could demonstrate it, but it's very noticeable once you start and you're like, oh, they're doing that thing.
right. Yeah, when you said that, the first person that came to mind was this singer Lily Allen. She's got that British, you can really tell. She's not trying to sound, American at all.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, I don't even know. I never really thought about it, but that's true. Or maybe you just get used to it, so when you sing along with it, you hear your own English version of it.
Like back in the day, like Sherry baby. There was this like falsetto that was really popular for a while, and several singers would do it. If someone like came out and sang like that today, you'd just be like, what in the heck is this? Like, I haven't heard a falsetto singer since the 50s.
Yeah.
But for a while there, it was super popular.
It worked for those, and even then, there were only a few people that could do it.
Mm-hmm.
There weren't that many Frankie Valleys out there.
Right.
Get right down to it. That was a very distinctive sound. You're just talking about a very distinctive, and somehow at that level, usually that's a more piercing sound. But his was, he hit some type of mellowness in there that he could pull it off and blend in with the other sounds behind him.
Mm-hmm.
But good Lord, that's really a rare thing. But it is interesting that you can have that kind of voice. I was thinking when you're talking about the different styles of how interesting Willie Nelson's voice is.
Mm-hmm.
And it just crosses all genres. And it starts out sounding country, but he can sing any song.
Right.
And he's not singing it country, he's singing it Willie. It's so distinctively a Willie Nelson song every time he sings any song.
Right.
And you can't really not say many people do that to a song.
It is sort of fascinating how each genre of music sort of has a dialect or an inflection to it.
Oh, definitely.
If you're going to start singing country music, you're going to incorporate a twang that you never had before. Like if you're a crossover, if you're coming from another genre into country, you're going to start doing this twang thing that's new to you.
Right.
But you.
Well, look, there's two great examples of Motown. I mean, all the Motown groups, the girl groups, the Marvelettes and Gladys Knight, they all had the same sound.
Right.
It was a genre of sound. But the most classic example would be bluegrass. You have to have a terrible voice or they don't let you in the door. That's just the rule. Son, you're going to have to get out of here. You sound like Bobby Darin or something.
You're in the wrong room.
You found the wrong bar, son. Go down there where them teenagers are downtown. You're ducking men in here.
But every genre of music's pretty much like that. Like there is a way to sing it, and if you're gonna get into that genre of music, and you're not gonna, like it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it is. I was thinking about a little while ago. I had another image that might be worth sharing. Right, comes together with talking about prejudice. I was thinking about prejudice. What's the definition of prejudice? And I think, I'm not prejudiced. Yes, I am. I was prejudiced the other day. Pickup truck pulled up behind me, and it was hard as just rap. Horrible music, just blaring out of there. That bass could have shook Selma Boulevard, and boing, and all that talking. And I turned around and looked at the guy, and it was this big old white boy, and I was just totally confused. I knew I was prejudiced, but I couldn't quite figure out how it worked. Was I? You know what I'm saying?
I
you follow that? I didn't know. I knew I was wrong for feeling like I didn't like whoever that was, but I assumed that music was going to make him be black, which I didn't want him to be, but it would have been honest. But when it was a white guy, I thought the white guy must be a real wannabe. And I was upset with him as being a white guy instead of being a black guy like he should. Well, I got so confused.
Just so many levels there.
There were so many things to analyze about what's wrong with my brain that it took the rest of the day to get it all cleared up. I'm sorry. That was terrible. I'm tired now. I just relived a little of that. The bass is still hurting my ears.
My prejudiced thoughts have worn me out. I can't really.
But it is good that our cultures are coming together, and the white boys and the pickup trucks are listening to rap music. I think that's a wonderful thing. Just don't do it around me.
Cut it down a notch.
Yes. I am deaf, and then you hurt my ears.
I'm still spiraling on just all the different dialects and ways of singing. Crooners. That was a whole thing and you had so many different ones.
Are there any out there now?
That's what I'm saying. Bublé. Did I say that right?
Yeah, I haven't heard. I don't even hear him anymore. Guess he's on some station, but yeah. But you know who was the best? The Willie Nelson genre of that voice was Tony Bennett. We just lost him there.
Rest in peace.
And he was the classic crooner. I love watching. I went back and watched some of his YouTubes or his old performances with people. He was so smooth. I mean, musically, he just knew. And everybody that was with him, everybody loved to do duets with him, because he was that guy. He understood he was going to take you with him, and y'all were going to make this together. It was beautiful.
He loved crossing genres too. There's a really good one with him and Janis Joplin on YouTube. It's worth a search. Tony Bennett, Janis Joplin.
Ooh, definitely.
So what's your bird this week?
This week we are doing the what they call a American kestrel.
Whoa, I've never heard of this.
Kestrel. Now, when I was growing up, we learned it as a sparrowhawk.
Now that I've heard of.
So the sparrowhawk is the common name that we have around here. If you see one and somebody says it's a sparrowhawk. So kestrel's not, but that's its technical name. So it is more in a subspecies of falcon, not a falcon per se. I think it's a close relation to a falcon. They're very fast. The peregrine falcon's the fastest bird. I can't remember the miles per hour, but so they're famous for that. These are carnivores. They feed on
Hunters.
These are about the size of a blue jay, maybe a little taller than a blue jay. They're the smallest falcon, so they're a little hawk. That's what they are, and they feed on sparrows, which is nice of them. They feed on small birds, lizards, mice, chipmunks, anything they can catch.
God, I never thought of
Rabbits.
a bird that would eat another bird.
Oh yeah, they will. The ones you see around our feeders in town are usually Cooper's hawks, which is a bigger hawk. I don't see any. I've never seen a sparrowhawk in town. They're more out in the country. They'll sit on the telegraph wires and look down, and they have sharp eyes of a hawk, and they can see movement, and they'll swoop down and grab a grasshopper and go back up. So they feed on insects, and they're all like if they're all in North America, and a lot of Central America and even South America. So they're a very common species. And,
Show it to the crowd.
yeah, it's a pretty bird, but you don't ever really see him up close.
With his grasshopper hanging out of his mouth.
Like, I wouldn't think of that as a hawk if I saw it. I wouldn't think it was related to a hawk.
That's a pretty bird.
It is a pretty bird. So in the wintertime up north, it'll move further south, but the ones that are here will move further south. So they kind of migrate, but not a great deal.
Right.
Just looking for food. So.
Do they have a sound? They make a sound?
They have a chirp-like sound, a hawk call, but they don't sing or anything like that. Obviously, they have great eyesight. They can hover. If you see a small bird hovering over a field, it's probably getting ready to go down, and it'll dive down and catch a mouse.
Wow.
They nest in cavities. They don't build a nest. But, they build a nest inside the cat, but they build in a cavity, a hole in a tree or rocks, or build old building or something. So, then they.
But they'll eat another bird?
Sure. Why not?
That seems really uncommon. Is that common?
Oh no.
If
you raise chickens out in Augusta County, you're always worried about hawks. The hawks get quail, and hawks get anything. They're flying up, and but birds, yeah.
Chicken hawk.
Chicken hawk, exactly.
So is that why it's called a sparrowhawk? Is because it's a predator?
Exactly. It indicates its size, because this bird would not attack a blue jay, for instance. He'd have to fight the blue jay, but he can scoop down and grab a sparrow. He's big enough to kill a sparrow, but just not big enough to. So that's where they got the sparrow idea.
I read in one of the blurbs about the falcon there, it said, speaking of words that mean other things, it said, this picture is a picture of a falcon in a dive or a stoop.
Stoop?
Stoop was another word for
S-
that motion.
STOOP?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't heard. I've never
It was in
heard that.
quotes. It was like in a dive for
Stoop.
or stoop.
Yeah, that's an amazing sight.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a osprey, a fish eagle, on Frank's Mill dive down. I mean, he was like, 100-yard, half mile up. He just went straight down in that, and then he just came up out of there and had a big carp.
That's unbelievable.
And it was just amazing. The carp was flapping, and just a day at the office.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Now, if these birds kill a sparrow, do they take it back to like their nest, feed the whole family, or they'll just take it to like some private space and eat it all themselves?
They'd take it to a branch and peck out. They wouldn't try to take off all the feathers or anything. They just go to the inside and eat the innards and work their way out. So they wouldn't probably get, and then they just tear off. They do have a hawk, the hooked beak, and that's good for tearing the meat. So they would take the meat back, but I don't know that they'd always take it back to the nest. They could probably just take it in pieces.
Wow.
From a perch.
That does seem weird. A bird eating another bird.
Yeah, right?
Isn't that
There's
funny?
something upsetting about this new information.
You have a prejudice there.
Like a chicken, I don't like.
Joe, I caught that too, by the way. Joe and I both laughed when you said telegraph wires.
I know. I caught it and said, I'm not going back. But I did catch it. But I was hoping it just slipped on through. Oh, God. I'm through.
So tell me the name again.
American kestrel.
Kestrel. That's interesting. That's the first time I've ever heard that word.
Yeah.
That's with a K? With a K?
K. It's a family of this type of bird. I mean, there's more species in that family, but that's what it's called. Those are.
And the overall family is the falcon?
Falcon's a bigger category, yes. The one that's most famous is the peregrine falcon. They're the ones where they have the live cams and building the skyscrapers in New York City, and the peregrine falcons feed on the pigeons.
Oh, my goodness.
There you go. I'm shooting your myth to all to hell.
He had to explain something to me a couple of weeks ago when we were leaving the show. I had read somewhere, and I'd seen this thing I read where this, it was like World War II, and this group was getting destroyed. They needed help, but they sent a carrier pigeon out. And the pigeon, when it got to where it was going, it had been shot. I think one of its wings was almost off. It had been shot like 3 or 4 times, but still made it to where it was going to deliver this message. And like a moron, I was just like so impressed. I was like, how do they get it to go where they want it to go? He's like, they don't get it to go where they want it to go. It goes to where it's supposed to go. It has like one destination. I was like, oh man, I thought they said like go 2 miles and then like be off at the church and drop this message off. And I was like, how do they train it? And he's like, no, you moron. It just goes back to the one spot that it knows where the base is. But I was sitting there thinking, that is the smartest bird in the world. Like, look at it in the face. We're giving you an important message.
So how did that work? How did messenger pigeons work?
Well, they were trained
from 2 spots.
Oh, 2 spots.
Yeah.
I was going to say, because I understand if it's just one spot, but then you'd have to drive it.
No, you could. You let them go from different places, and they always fly back to the same place.
Same
Right.
spot.
So if you are sending a message, you're sending it back to its home thing.
Right.
But it has to be brought to a different
I think
location.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
can take it
yeah.
with you and then
And it's like a homing
Yeah.
pigeon.
But my moron self was I was asking, how do
I
they
don't
get it
think
to
I
go
ever-
exactly where you wanted it to go?
Right.
Like,
Yeah, well, I knew you couldn't do that,
750
but
Summer Boulevard, go! You know, anything.
Fly! Boy, I hope that works.
All right, well, you just shared with me a moment where you felt like a real idiot. And, the truth is that's just what you were. So I want to share with you one. I need to get this off my chest. Last time we were together, unfortunately, we haven't seen you since last Thursday. On the way home from here, you asked me if I was going to watch a football game.
Right.
And I said, there was no football game tonight. In my mind, I'm thinking, football doesn't start for another month.
Right.
And this idiot that's
Right.
driving me home, I'm not sure. if
Sports ball.
And yeah, I'm the guy that knows ball. He doesn't.
Right.
What's he asking me about a football game? Football they haven't even met yet. How can you have a game? And I got home and sat down in my chair and turned on the TV.
Sure enough.
And there was a damn football game live, and I wanted to call you up and apologize, but then I would have had to tell the whole story.
Right. Are we talking soccer?
No,
Oh, we're
No,
not. We're not even talking
NFL
soccer.
football.
Oh, really?
They had the Hall of
Preseason,
Fame game last
Oh, my
Thursday night
goodness.
while
It's
we
too
were
hot
doing
for
the
that.
show. That's why our numbers were down.
Wow. Oh, that explains it. That explains it.
Yeah.
Interesting. God, it's too hot for football.
I mean, I hadn't even thought they'd started practicing yet.
Right.
But he was on top of it, and I was an idiot. So I feel better now. I got that off my chest.
So
You're clear.
So he tried to apologize by telling the pigeon, goes 5 houses down and dropped this
I sent a
message
pigeon
off.
to apologize. I hope it found you. Because I tell you what, I really was
The
sorry.
pigeon said, I don't know.
Oh, you didn't get the pigeon I sent?
The pigeon was like, I don't know what he told me, but I'm going back to the police station like I always do.
I told a story today on my news show explaining a brain fart I had on yesterday's show. I was illustrating it with a story. You probably don't remember this, but when I was a kid, I was at your house and we were watching a football game, and I got it in my mind somehow. It was an example of what I'm calling wrong thinking. That for some reason I decided that it would have been brilliant strategy for them just to miss the extra point. I was like, if they miss the extra point, then the next time they score, they'll go ahead. And I just it doesn't make any sense. There's no, but I was like, I kept thinking about it. I was like, God, why don't people do this? And I told you about it. I was like, why don't they just not score the extra point? Then they'll go ahead the next time they score. Like it was this brilliant strategy, but it was just a really classic. You probably don't remember this.
Wait a minute, so the extra point would have like made it a tie?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But for some reason, in that moment in time, I convinced myself that it would have been smarter for them just to not score the extra point. And I said it to you, and you looked at me like I was crazy, and it was just like, son, that doesn't make any sense, and you snapped me out of it. And I was like, oh, right. And I'll never forget that moment, because I was perplexed at the time, like, why were you thinking, like, how could you think like that? I was just wrong thinking, and just like completely convinced, only for a few minutes, but it's a moment I never forgot and relayed today in my story. It's like, it
Wow.
reminds me when I was a kid and I got convinced that it was really smart to not score the extra point.
That's funny.
But it's just
a very interesting story.
there's something there. I want to
Yes, there
ask
is.
Heather about it when she gets home.
I think
if there's
she should definitely hear
if there's
this.
something in psychology that explores wrong thinking.
Wrong thinking.
Just wrong thinking.
Yeah, I hear you.
Just get yourself all worked up in a complete fallacy. Like,
Oh, I've been analyzing that about my personal life recently.
oh yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Just wrong thinking?
Oh, definitely. Definitely, I put everything in my own perspective of things, and I try to see other things, and I do.
But you see those
But-
other
but
things
I-
from your own perspective. still.
Exactly, that's part of it. but partly is that even if I do see more angles than other people, I'm still not seeing many of them. There's so many more ways of seeing it that I'm not taking into account.
Right.
And sometimes those are just flying in like comets and just landing and making a difference, and I'm not recognizing it.
Right.
And sometimes it's just exactly what I get something in my head, and that's the way I feel like it is, and I just leave it. I don't ever think about it. Might not be that way all the time, or
Right.
it might not be that way down the street, or in the next house, or
Right.
whatever. You know,
They're called blind spots for a reason.
Yeah.
It's almost by definition impossible for you to solve your own blind spots. Like, it's a blind spot. You're not seeing it, so you can't fix that.
you're
like
not
if-
going there. You're not even working on it.
you're not even working on it. Right. It's a
Yeah, and that's the ones
and
we're
other
talking about.
perspectives are so important in our lives for that very
I'm
reason.
seeing things that at one time in my life I thought were characters. They were part of my character. And now I look back in my life and I see them as areas of weakness. I wasn't strong enough to think of things in a different way. I always saw them my way instead of taking a look around and saying, you don't have to see it that way. But you can lead your whole down a completely different self-absorbed path.
Yeah.
So there's,
Yeah.
I think we all do that.
And a lot, that's human nature.
Yeah.
But it's also, that's one of the very important roles of community and friends and stuff like that we provide for each other, is to show each other ourselves from a different angle, from a different perspective, so we can become fuller, more wholly realized individuals.
It's true. We've done 33 1/3 of these,
That's right.
and I still learn something from each of you each time we come together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And we haven't even got to sex yet.
That's right.
You avoided that pretty damn
Yeah,
well.
welcome to tonight's episode on sex
I told
here on
everybody I was going
Jabberjawn.
to talk about sex.
Yeah, Dad put it. So, and then looks like we were out of time.
But
I couldn't tell
tune
if you were
in next
serious.
week.
I couldn't tell if you were serious or not. I was thinking, how am I going to bring this up, and what am I going to say?
I was just going to be like, so Dad, what do you got on your mind here?
See, you guys, it'd be hard to pull off, but I can get serious. I'll leave you with this.
Okay.
Now you got your song ready?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Here, this is the introduction to my lectures to biology students back in the 70s. I used to teach some biology at Robert E. Lee High School in Stanton, Virginia. And I would start off the lecture on sex, and I'd pick out some kid, well, let's just say he was like Kyle. Like, didn't really stand out. He's kind of silly and nice guy, but he wasn't an athlete. And I'd look at him and I'd start off and I'd say, now, Kyle, have you ever won a race? And you'd look at me and I'd say, you'd say, what kind of, well, you could, I don't know, what kind of race?
Yeah, what kind of race?
Well, you had to run, you had to beat somebody. You had a bunch of guys and y'all ran somewhere. Have you ever done that? Have you ever won a race?
Yes.
Have you raced?
Yes.
Then you won the race?
Occasionally, yes. Depending on who my opponents were.
Now you got a little belly on you there, Kyle. Are you still winning a lot of races? I'm making stuff up now. Let me just go back and tell us. I got involved with Kyle being my student. I would never talk like that to a student. That's wrong. I'm sorry. I would say, Kyle, if you've never won, I'm going to tell you something. You've won a race. You've won an amazing race. What if I was to tell you that 80 million people lined up and had a race, and the winner was you? And what would you say? You'd say, I'm pretty special. And I would say, welcome to sexual reproduction. An ejaculation releases 80 million sperm. That's a bigger number than you can ever count. A woman has 400 eggs in her lifetime.
Wow.
Who do you think God trusts? I don't say that, but I just made that up. I mean, I was just thinking about that today. That's what I used to tell the kids, get them excited about talking about sexual reproduction.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
The idea that each ejaculation, 80 million sperm try to make it up there, and one makes it every so often. Usually none make it, and one makes it, and that becomes the next human being. That's remarkable.
It is remarkable.
Right there.
Wow. Proud of myself, man.
There you go.
I am 1 in 180 million.
Reminds me of a Bill Hicks quote. I've wiped civilizations off my chest with a gray gym sock.
Yes. Oh God, I'm not sure we can do a song after that.
I know. I've not said
Take
this.
it. Maybe you ought to take it someplace else.
Where? Wish I could croon or
Did you
hip
see
sing.
that? Did you see that one on Facebook I put about the songs?
Oh, I did, yeah.
Had some interesting stuff there. I've enjoyed that.
Songs that will take you to a whole nother place.
Yeah, I like that.
I don't know. Any requests? I'm going to grab a guitar pick.
$80 million, man, that's a big number.
Yeah, that's and so it is sort of like a race, huh?
Yeah. Or a lottery. I don't know if it's how it's skill, but
What are the chances? I know they've figured this out. Like, what are your chances of winning a lottery? Less than 80 million, or more than 80? 1 in 80 million, or more than that? Greater.
much greater. Profit-wise, very greater.
Gosh.
You've written over 80 million songs.
All the songs I've written are now racing to the egg of this moment. Oh, I don't remember the words. God, that would be perfect. You just nailed it.
What is it?
It's a newer song of mine called "Running."
Do it.
I don't think I would remember the words.
You just grunt and groan the parts you don't remember.
He died at 29 at the end of a bottle. So in so few years he wrote all those songs. Many might say that's not how you ought to live your life, but damn those songs. Watching the fire still burn. When will I ever learn? I don't mean I have to get higher. I don't have to set me on fire. This doesn't have to go down to the wire. Doesn't have to go down. hotel, that famous hotel where genius would hang. She was always free, now she always will be. Was anyone freer than when she sang? Watching the fire still burn. When will I ever learn? That don't mean I have to get higher. I don't have to set me on fire. This doesn't have to go down to the wire. Doesn't have to go down. No idea why I picked this song.
I love it.
haven't sang it in a long time.
It's a beautiful song.
He died at 75, always a fighter, screaming at demons like a back alley cat. He teased the reaper, I dare you to try it. I'll shave with your scythe, wipe my face with your hat. Watching the fire still burn. When will I ever learn? That don't mean I have to get higher. I don't have to set me on fire. This doesn't have to go down to the wire. Doesn't have to go down. Should I sing it in different dialects?
Portuguese.
Like you're from Portland.
Right, exactly. Thank you guys
Very
so
good.
much. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time on Jabber
Yay,
John. Percy
Percy.
says goodbye. Thank
Yeah.
you, Lex, for subbing
Yeah,
on the
Thank
producer
you, Lex.
role.
Thank you.
Man, so much fun.
Great job.
See you next time.
Great song.
Oh,
Love
so
it.
hit here, wait, actually. Did that work? Yeah. Whew. Good
Wow.
job. Yeah, the mic's still on. No.
That was fun with